Hello, everyone. Grab your parkas, grab your snow boots, grab your long johns, because the book we're going to be talking about today is going to take us to a very cold, very isolated, and very terrifying place. And this author does such a great job with it that you're going to feel all that right to your very core. Let's talk about all that right now. All right, so the book we're going to be talking about today is All the White Spaces by Wilkes. And unfortunately, I have to say, I almost didn't get this book. I almost didn't read it. And the reason I almost didn't read it is because I never read full reviews for the books I'm about to read for this channel. I don't want spoilers. I don't want anybody else influencing my thoughts when I'm reading. But I do read the blurbs to see if it's a book I actually want to take the time to read. And the blurb for this book always said, brought up two elements mainly. It would always say, this book is part historical fiction, part coming-of-age tale. And I thought to myself, I really don't like either of those things in a book separately. So maybe I shouldn't read this book if they're combining those two things somehow. But man, I am so glad I had recommendations from people on Twitter that I trust that said, no, you know what, don't worry about all that, you're going to love it. I finally decided to give it a go. And I have to say, this is probably going to be in my list of top 10 best books that came out in 2022. Because it's just that good. It concerns a polar expedition. A group of men setting foot in uncharted territory, set in the 1920s, by the way. And that's, I think, where a lot of people say it's historical fiction because it's set in the 20s. I don't really think that's an accurate description. It's just a book set in the 1920s. But that doesn't mean it's historical fiction. It's actually horror fiction that happens to be set in a time past. Like a period piece, almost. But there's a group of men. They're going to go explore uncharted territory, trying to get to the Antarctic. This is an age of adventures. This is an age where these men that perform these deeds or try to perform these deeds are larger than life in the minds of the communities they come from. And they are full steam ahead trying to do something that nobody else has done before. And we're told this story through the eyes of a young boy named Jonathan. Jonathan is only 17 years old. And one thing, I'm going to try to make this as spoiler-free as possible, because this is a book you have to read, you have to absorb, you have to feel and experience for yourself. With as little knowledge going in as possible, I think. I think that's the best way to read this book. Because Jonathan, even set in the 1920s, Jonathan was born as a girl. And of course, back then, that's not a very acceptable thing, claiming to be a boy when you were born a girl. It just something that didn't happen back then. Even though it did go on, you know. All these issues we talk about today that seem to be pushing their way to the forefront have actually been going on for a long time. All those people that say, well, this country is going to hell because, remember the good old days, all that kind of thinking, there was never any such thing. Everything happening today has been happening throughout history. So I thought that was a very brave choice by the author, and I really, really liked that choice because it gives you a whole new perspective. But Jonathan stows away on this ship that's bound for Antarctica. And the reasons why she does it has to do with the war that just ended, his two older brothers who fought and died in the war over in France, and their love of this kind of adventure, something they've always wanted to do, and he feels obligated to help fulfill that on behalf of his brothers. So he stows away as a 17-year-old on this ship. And he wants nothing more than to just be able to be who he is He wants to be one of the guys. He wants to be one of the boys. He wants to fit in with this group of ruffians and salty sea dogs, that are making this journey. But let's just say things don't go as planned, and something happens to the ship they're on. They're forced to grab as many rations as they can, abandon ship, and they wind up in a place that is very cold, very dark, very isolated, and no chance of rescue coming. And that's where most of our story takes place, and you can feel this environment in your bones, because this is a beautifully written book with so much little detail, so many little details thrown in here and there, that when the author is describing the weather and how brutal it is, you can feel it in your bones. I live in Cambodia. I'm reading this book. The weather outside is 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm getting a chill inside. I can feel the ice forming on my face. I can feel that wind whipping right through me, and no amount of clothes can ever get rid of that kind of weather. Because they are in a place where temperatures often drop below 40 degrees, where the threat of exposure is always an issue. And the buildings they occupy are ramshackle. They're not meant for that kind of weather, and it provides little relief. On top of that, you have men who are used to violence. You have men who are, like I said, they've been doing this a long time. They're the kind of guys that would throw somebody overboard, let them drown in an icy ocean if they felt a line had been crossed, and wouldn't even think twice about it, right? And their supplies are dwindling. And yet they're isolated. They are alone, or so they think, because out there in this frozen wasteland, uncharted territories that they find themselves in, alone, isolated, with no chance of escape, there's an evil presence lurking, trying to pick them off one by one, and it does. But this evil is not of the long claws and slobbering, fang-filled mouth variety of most monsters. This one doesn't come in and forcibly take people. It's more subtle. It gets into their head. It gets into their mental state. This evil, this presence appears as different people that each one knows from their past, people they are attached to, people who maybe they haven't quite let go of that person in their past, and it's constantly weighing on their minds. And this evil will lead them away and lead them to do things to sabotage any comfort the others in the camp might have. I know I'm not doing this book justice with the description, but when you're reading it, you are into it, and you will be amazed. But this this threat from the outside, this evil presence, to me, was just like the icing on the cake. That's the thing they really had to worry about. But the main meat of this book are all the other threats, all the other horrors that could happen there. Because to every man on that expedition, there's one thing on their mind. If they survive the winter, which, by the way, the winter there is going to be 3 months of darkness. No light, no sunlight at all. So they're going to have to live with darkness for 3 months, and that kind of thing can drive a man mad. But even if they survive that, even if they survive the monster or this evil presence, even if they survive with the lowering rations, even if they can survive the elements, even if they can somehow manage to do all that and get through this winter, then what? Nobody's coming for them. There is no search party. Nobody knows where they are. This is uncharted territories. And to me, that was the scariest part of this book, because people struggling to survive, knowing they have to survive, and yet realizing that no matter what they do, they will probably just die out there alone with nobody ever knowing what happened to them despite everything they had to do to survive. That is a very scary thought. And this is in the back of their minds. But also with these kind of men and those kind of circumstances, with the darkness, the dwindling rations, tensions keep building and building and building. Accusations are thrown. Talks of sabotage, talk of treason and mutiny arise. And it's a very volatile situation. There are threats from without, there are threats from within, and nobody is safe from the elements, nobody is safe from each other, and nobody is safe from the evil presence that can draw them away and have the elements just have at them or just disappear off the face of the earth. But this book is beautifully written. Yeah, the prose is simply gorgeous. It is so engaging from beginning to end. And there are so many more things in between I haven't said because, like I said, you have to experience this book. You have to read it. You have to put yourself in that world. But I was so entranced in there. I was so, I felt like I was part of that expedition as I was reading this book. And I was sad at their situation. I was scared for them. This book will make you feel many things. You'll feel sadness. You might feel some joy as Jonathan finally gets to be a part of this group and he's accepted just as one of the boys. But other than that, you're going to feel hopelessness. You're going to feel isolation. You're going to feel the threat of madness taking over your mind. And, of course, the threat of that thing that is also a constant presence, lurking, trying to take you and kill you, basically. It's a great book. That's all I really can say. And I think if you get past the fact that it's called historical fiction or a coming-of-age book, I think you are going to love it as much as I did. It's a fantastic, fantastic book. And there are just so many elements to it and so many metaphors and so many undercurrents that it's hard to describe it in a video of this length. But yeah, if you can't tell, I highly, highly recommend this. You got to pick up this book now. All the white spaces. I'll leave a link below in the description to the Amazon page if you want to purchase it from there. Also down below, I'll leave a link to my Twitter if you want to join me on there. And as always, thank you for taking a little bit of your time and spending it with me. I really appreciate it. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.